Hi, and welcome back to DanYellScraps. Today I have an awesome tutorial for you that I think you're just going to run to the scrap room to do. We're going to create these layered images using one color of ink. And we're actually going to start with the beautiful stamp set called Beautiful You. 22 images and coordinating thin cuts come with this. Now you can die cut the images out after you layer them, and it gives you wonderful results. We're going to start with some vellum. The Close to My Heart vellum comes in a 3-pack, so you get 3 12 by 12 sheets in each pack. I'm going to cut mine down to about 3 inches. You wouldn't need it any wider, but I'm going to be making several stamping images, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave it at that 12-inch mark and use the whole piece as I need. I'm going to start with my largest image of the base image that I'll need, and I'm going to do this on a white daisy cardstock. All my white daisy cardstocks in the video are cut down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I definitely need the space so that I have room to die cut later, and I know that any extra space that's left on here I can totally use for fussy cutting projects in the future. So my first image that I'm going to stamp is going to be in Pacifica blue. I love this color of blue. It's very rich. And I'm going to clean my stamp between each color change, and my next one that I'm going to go ahead and use is going to be pomegranate. A very lovely red color, and this is actually the first time I am using this one with our new ink pads, and these are very nice. They're magnetic and they open instead of the old version, which were the twists. So I'm just going to do that tap, tap, twist, twist, tap, tap motion to ensure that my image is inked properly. If you notice in here, I do not double ink these images because they come out just fine and beautiful. Sometimes with dye-based ink, it will stamp blotchy, and as it dries, it fills in and it's just radiant. And sometimes you might experience that, but just let it dry and you'll see. The third one I'm going to use is in the beautiful yellow lemon color. I do go ahead and stamp this twice, although after looking at it, I probably didn't need to. But because the secret to what we're using today is with vellum, I was afraid that the single stamp image of this wouldn't show through the vellum like it needed to, so I go ahead and do 2 of them just to be safe. Okay, so we're going to bring in our vellum, and this is where the secret and the magic kind of happens. On the vellum, I'm going to use the second and the third, or the medium and the small, stamp layering images of this rose. I'm going to stamp them, both of them, in each of the 3 colors that I've done. So I'll do 1 row in yellow, 1 row in Pacifica, and 1 row in pomegranate. And I'm going to be embossing on this. Yes, I'm going to emboss with water-based ink. But before I do that, I'm going to make sure that I run some baby powder cornstarch over my vellum, because I don't want any of my fingerprints to capture any of the clear embossing powder that I'm going to be putting on here. I want to make sure that embossing powder strictly sticks to my image that I have stamped. And the trick to making sure your vellum warps little to none at all is to make sure that you have an extremely hot heat gun in the back. So the whole time while I'm stamping, that heat gun is running in the back so that it's nice and hot. So you can see here I'm using that cornstarch baby powder on here, and I just did a DIY version. You can just look it up on YouTube, and there's lots of tutorials to do that, or you could go out and buy an application if you need to. This is the Pacifica blue, and again, this is water-based dye ink. This is not pigment ink. Therefore, I'm able to stamp on this vellum and emboss it because it sits on top of it for so long and it doesn't soak in immediately like it does on cardstock. Just pay close attention here. Even though I'm moving my vellum up, I still get those 2 small roses too close to each other. So when I cut them out, I don't leave enough space for it to be layered as the top layer for die cutting. And I'm going to have to fix that off camera here, and you'll notice that later. I'm just going to go ahead and finish this up by heat embossing this after I put my clear embossing powder on. Make sure though that you're using clear and not white, because you really want the color to show through and you don't want to cover that up. Now I'm going to be using my Bonding Memories dual tip glue pen. I really, really like this. It's dual action, I'm sorry. I really like this glue pen because what it does is if the glue, if it's blue, it's going to be a permanent adhesive. But if it dries a little clear, it becomes positionable. Once it's on there and it's pressed down, you're good to go. But I like that it dries a little bit clear and I can have leeway with moving it around. So it works really well with this technique. Now I'm putting this on the back side of the vellum where I inked. Some of the glue does kind of flow over where I inked, but because I feel like I smoothed it out good enough, you really can't see it at all when I finish putting all the layers together. So I've combined all 3 layers. On top of my white daisy, I'm adding my thin cut. I'm going to go ahead and cut this out. So I always run mine through and then run it backwards, just a personal preference. And then here is what the magic really happens and how this all comes together. I put a acrylic block on top of all of my cutouts after I do that, just to 1, help the glue stay together, and 2, if there were any warping issues when I did heat emboss, this is just going to help keep that nice and smooth from when it ran through the embossing machine. And you can see here that I'm doing the same thing that I did with the flowers, with the vellum and the white daisy, with the leaves. The leaves have this really nice vein. I went ahead and stamped it in clear ink. I went ahead and stamped it in willow ink and applied clear embossing powder and heat embossed them just the same. And I was able to still use that dual action Bonding Memories glue pen and adhere those down. And it turned out really well. I was very satisfied with how that pen worked and adhering these images down and not making, like, big streaks or blobs behind the vellum. So I'm just going to run this through here, and the thin cuts come 3 leaves and 2 or 3 roses. I don't have it right in front of me to double check that, but it just works so nicely. And for my cards that I make today, I am doing 3 leaves for every rose that I created. And so you can see here that I'm just finishing up with that. And so now, I don't know how good of a look you just got there, but you can really see how all 3 layers came through, and it looks like you used 3 different colors, or maybe 2nd or 3rd generation stamping, when really you didn't. It's the vellum that holds the secret to all of that. So now let's go ahead and get our card bases together, and let's finish this card off. I am going to use one of my favorite embossing folders from Close to My Heart. Is currently retired. And I'm just going to line up my paper in there until I feel like, the design fits it centered. I want a flat area on my card where I'm going to adhere my rose. So I'm going to use the Close to My Heart circle diffuser, and I'm going to put it off center because I don't want it centered in my card. I kind of want the element to be off to the side. And I run this through for each white daisy piece. And this is just cut a little bit smaller than a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, my card bases that I'm embossing right now, because I want a border to be left around that's going to be in cardstock that matches the flowers that I just created. So I made a lemon flower and I'm using lemon cardstock. I made a Pacifica rose. I'm going to use Pacifica cardstock and pomegranate and so on and so forth. And I just cut those down so from a 12 by 12 sheet to make a base card that is top folding or side folding. It's personal preference for you. That's just what I made for myself. And so I'm almost done here using the embossing folder. And I really quick want to mention these embossing folders are very nice if you are wanting to create a border for the 12 by 12 scrapbook page. There's a slit in there, and it's about a 3-inch wide piece will fit through there, and you can create a 3 by 12 inch border, which is really nice if you have that. And these are also 5 by 7, so if you're making a 5 by 7 card, you'll definitely have room, and they're large enough for that, so they're not super tiny. Okay, so I mentioned my cardstock before, so I'm going to just collect all my pieces to my cards, and I'm going to grab the coordinating cardstock that goes with my flowers. Little matchy. I don't always do this, so I was pretty pleased though with how this turned out. And you can see here again that rose and how beautiful those images just come together when they're layered like that. And those veins, they turned out so nice. I need to learn how to zoom on my camera, and once I figure that out, then I won't have to throw my hand in your face like that. But I'm going to use some dimensional tape to adhere down my rows, and I'm just going to use my ATG gun to adhere down my leaves. I don't want them to be sticking up. I want them to be like in the background because I really want my focal point to be my rows. Just do 2 leaves off to the side and 1 to the other side. No rhyme or reason for it. It's just what looked good to me at the time. I'm sure that if I made these again, I would probably maybe do more cluster of leaves or maybe some more cluster of roses. There are other smaller size roses in there, and I think it would be lovely to do a cluster of roses in different sizes on a card like this. But for today's purpose, I just really wanted to get out this little tip, this little secret on how to get these layering effects with that one ink. Again, I'm just using some 3D adhesive here, and I'm just going to pop that rose up, and it just really makes a huge difference when you do that. And I just put that in the center where there was that diffuser that I used. Now I'm going to create the sentiment. I'm going to use short and sweet stamp set. I'm going to use the Get Well and the Happy Birthday, and I'm actually going to cut these apart. So you can see how together on the stamp pad there are they box up on top of each other, and they would fit like a 1x1 block that way. So I'm going to cut them apart so that I have a nice strip, because I would like to put these on black cardstock and heat embossed in white embossing powder. So I'm going to use Versamark ink to stamp my images on my black cardstock, and then I'm going to use white embossing powder to accent this. I found that when I do my pigment ink in white and then do like clear embossing powder, for some reason I just get like some sort of splotchy turnout when I do that. So I found that when I use my Versamark, I guess I don't get as much ink on there, and it just works better for me. If you can do it the other way, then more power to you, and I think that's amazing. So again, my heat tool is in the background. It's heating up because you really still want that to be nice and hot regardless if you're working on vellum or not, because you don't want your paper to warp either way, because you have to get it closer because it's not hot enough. So I'm going to wrap up doing my stamping, and now I'm going to go ahead and add my white embossing powder, and I'm just using Ranger. And I really like the fine embossing powder by Ranger. It seems to capture everything it needs to. You'll notice as you get a close-up of my sentiments here, I did not use my little embossing tool with my cornstarch baby powder in it. And you'll see that not doing so has really an effect on how this turns out. And so some of the letters get a little blotchy together. But at the end of the day, I know exactly who I'm sending these cards to, and they're going to love them no matter what. They just are going to be even more special because it just truly shows that it was handmade. So I'm going to use 2 Get Well Soon and 1 Happy Birthday, because those are the cards that I needed in particular today. And I'm wrapping this up right here. And that one right there is the one that you really kind of did a little glop job on the Happy Birthday. So probably if I would have slowed down just a little bit, it would have helped out a lot. But I am going to adhere this. I'm going to dovetail it. So I'm going to cut a little line in the center, and then from each corner to the center of that line, I'm going to cut like a triangle out of each end, and that's called dovetailing. Off video, I adhere this down on the video, but off video, I go ahead and add black glitter cardstock to this, and I do that because I just wanted some extra shine. I just wanted some extra oomph on this. And then I also go ahead and add what Close to My Heart calls itty bitty, and they're little tiny rhinestones that just I add here and there throughout and around the flowers, and it just really gives it a nice pop. So as we finish up here, I'm gonna just bring this a little closer so that you can see. I'm so glad that you stopped in for the tutorial today. I hope I've inspired you to get out and get creative. I will have a list of all of the products that I used today in the descriptions below, and enjoy getting crafty. Have a good one. Bye.